Hello, Deb.
Hi.
Welcome. Would you do me a favor, please? First of all, I do want to stamp this with our date.
Yes.
It's August 18, 2020. So glad you're with us today. And
I am a freelance writer. I write everything from travel writing to just general magazine writing. I write fiction. I write historical fiction predominantly, and I write poetry. So those are the things that I concentrate on at the present time. It's kind of broad.
yeah. No, it's a nice mix. Have you seen these genres in which you participate and for which you write? Have they evolved over time?
Oh, absolutely. There is a larger market for historical fiction at the present time than there was even 10 years ago. There is a larger market for poetry in the form of anthologies. And there's very little market for just general fiction, except in anthologies. You're usually more apt to get a journalistic feature of some sort published. But even that has been difficult during this period of time. I do some occasional travel writing. That's been impossible during this period of time of COVID for many reasons. And I actually had a book project that we had to drop completely because of COVID. And that was pretty disappointing because I couldn't do any additional research because churches were closed, and the book was about the history of St. Louis churches and cathedrals. And I had 10 churches. A lot of them were Catholic because of the types of buildings that they have. And I was able to connect with the archivist at the Archdiocese, who was very helpful. But the publisher I was working with requires about 80% photographs, and they need to be vintage photographs. So you're delving into historical photographs, and you just can't find those. You're not accessible to you unless you're meeting with someone inside the church, a historian inside the church. And that was impossible because churches were closed and remain closed. So what happened was I talked with the acquisitions editor of the publisher and said, look, I'm really having difficulties at the present time because of COVID. She said, we'll be a little lenient with you because of the fact that, it's going to take a while before things open up. Well, time dragged on, and then numbers started escalating. And once the numbers started escalating, it was a matter of, you know what, we need to shut this thing down. So she told me that if things ever opened up and I was still interested in doing it, then I should give her a call, and we would cobble together something. I'm not exactly a cobbling kind of person. And I would prefer to have something that was not cobbled together. So we agreed that I informed her that I would pull the project at the present time and just let it go.
Well, there's a reputation at stake. You are a longtime writer. I know you served as a reporter. You were the first sports writer, is that right, in the state?
That's
Woman, female.
yeah.
Yeah.
First female sports writer in Missouri. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
but there's a reputation there that has to be safeguarded. So you have to do that. You poor person got sick yourself with COVID. How did that play a part in your work?
I came down with COVID early in the whole thing because I discovered I was sick on Good Friday. So, and I was in isolation for 16 days. And what happened during those 16 days, I would not wish on anyone. And although I tried to start a journal during that period of time, it was sporadic because there were days when I was very, very ill. I did have hallucinations. I tried to write in my journal during that period of time, and I couldn't focus enough to do that. So needless to say, there were a lot of writing projects that I might have started during that period of time that I didn't because I did not have focus. So I do a lot of research into potential markets, excuse me. And I do a lot of that online, most of it online. And I just had no desire to do any of that sort of thing because I was weak. One day I would feel good. The next day I would feel like I wanted to die. But I was very fortunate. I did not end up in the hospital. I remained at home the entire time. And it was considered a mild case. But I can't imagine what anybody who has a worse case than what I had would be going through. I still don't have my senses of taste or smell back completely. Of course, the two are interrelated. You would think that I would not be eating during that period of, because of that. But I keep thinking that the next bite's going to be the one that unleashes the entire thing, and I discover that I have it all back. It doesn't work that way. So there is a project out there where, and I can't remember the name of it exactly, where women are encouraged, if they are journaling through the COVID experience, that they can submit their journals, and it will eventually end up in a women's project in Washington, D.C. That's going to consist of the history of this COVID pandemic from their journals. So
that's fascinating.
I'll submit my partial journal at that point.
Yeah. So, I guess writers, that sensibility is always there, the desire, the urgency.
Right. And, having been a journalist,
and
newspaper journalist, there's really a sense of urgency. It's like, we have to get this out there, and we have to get it out in a timely fashion, but we have to do it to maintain it for history also.
So distinguish those two things. It's like we're doing here with this series. It's in the now, but we hope this will carry forth and be a research piece for folks down the line.
Well, because we're in the midst of the pandemic still, and it's a matter of, when we started, we knew very little about about novel coronavirus. As we've progressed, we've learned more.
8 months.
We still don't know everything. And I think it's very important that people realize that this is what is affecting people. This is why people are getting, depressed, because they've been confined for as long as they have. This is why we're afraid for our children to go to school and how that's going to impact us. And we need to see that we're not alone in those situations. We're not the only ones who are thinking about this. I don't have children. I have grandchildren. I have grandchildren who've been homeschooled, since day one. So I feel that I'm very fortunate. We need to address those sorts of things now. There's nothing to be afraid of in homeschooling your children. My oldest grandson tests very high, and he actually tests higher than other children in his grade level. But it's those kinds of things that are important for us, as well as seeing this is how we are advancing, this is how we're regressing, and that's important for now. As there have been pandemics before, and the only time they're being brought up, it seems, is when there's another pandemic. and I think we need to, it's important that we view that from a historical perspective, because yes, we survived that, but there were a lot of things we went through.
I'm sorry. Could you want to introduce to the audience Noelle?
I have a very old Bichon who has now disappeared because I was turning around.
I wanted to
That is not my stomach growling, that is my dog wanting a treat.
You read my mind. That's exactly what I was going to say. I wanted the audience to note our stomachs were not growling.
No, it had nothing to do with that, and I apologize, but if I closed the door, she would be scratching the door down. So
it's okay. It's all right. It was just funny.
So we have an audience member that I apologize for.
We need the little bits of comic relief, during these times.
That's very true. And Bichons are known for being little comics, and they're clowns.
Yeah.
And, whether we want them to be or not. So anyway, back to the historical perspective, I think it's very, very important for us to not only look at the pandemic overall, but it's very important that we look at it from a human perspective. This is how it affected the individuals. This is how it affected families. And the only way we're going to know that is if individuals speak up and let people know this is what we're going through. COVID affects everyone.
Yeah.
And, at some point in time, you're going to know someone who has COVID.
So Deb, as an observer, as a longtime writer, we have the layer of institutional racism and the protests and, the death of George Floyd, I should say the murder of George Floyd upon us. And, this is another layer. And you as an observer, I'm curious, as a writer, how does this impact you?
It makes me realize that there are a multitude of things that are negatively impacting us at the present time. And I've always been, up until a year ago, I lived next to Ferguson. And that affected me very personally because, it was a matter of a lot of my neighbors were protesting, and I think we have a lot of things that we're upset about. And that's what I concentrate on at the present time is how do we get people to a point where we're not as volatile as we are now. And everything has layered, as you said, on top of one another. We're upset with the healthcare system. We're upset with racism. We are upset with our political situation. We're upset with the economy. And all of these things play in together to affect each of us. It's like sensory bombardment. You hear about one of these things or another all the time, and there is no relief, and people are very stressed out. And I think that, and this goes to a non-journalistic perspective, and that is, I find that writing is very healing. And I think it's very important that people document where they are, what their feelings are. There has to be some way to get this emotional release out there. And whether they are, and as far as the protests go, I have been someone who, I marched in Louisville, Kentucky 2 years ago because of the economic situation in an area. I have always said, because I'm a child of the 60s, if you have a complaint, do something about it. Let your voice be heard. And I don't agree with looting. I think looting is, completely, not only is it destructive, but it dilutes the message. But I think that protesting and writing, getting your voice out there, projecting your voice is very, very important.
Your writing the last several months, has it taken into consideration a change, a nuanced phrase or a change in the words you use as a result of everything that's happened this year?
Yes, it has, as a matter of fact. It has changed a lot of things. I am, because I write from a historical perspective a lot of the time, I'm including a number of things that I would not have included otherwise. Today we celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. This now plays a part in a historical fiction novel that I'm writing, because I have a protagonist who has been a socialite her entire life, and now we're evolving into the fact that, hey, look, I'm not stupid, and I have other things that I'm interested in, and it's a matter of bringing those things into the settings that you're that you're working with at the present time, that I'm working with at the present time.
Each year, you probably are respectful of something else that makes you refine your writing in those regards.
Absolutely. You take, what I've done is I've taken, from year to year, I have taken what is happening in our community and nationally, and worked it into the writing, the historical writing that I'm doing. The period of time that I'm dealing with at the present time is the end of the 19th century and early 20th century. During that period of time, the people I'm dealing with had workers in their home who were Black. And, then there became a point in time where where the people who were working in their homes decided that, there are other opportunities out there for me. So you take those things, look at what's happening now. There are other opportunities for Black people out there where they have opportunities for education, or in education, they have opportunities in the workforce that they did not have before. So you take those kinds of things and you integrate them into a historical perspective. And, it's something that you have to constantly be aware of. You have to constantly be aware of your environment, and what is affecting the people around you as well as yourself. And work that
Absolutely. Absolutely. You speak of opportunities. Let's go back to writing opportunities. What have you observed lately? Are we, where are we?
Writing opportunities are few and far between. And if you have been a journalist, depending upon the genre that you're working in, perhaps you need to broaden your menu a bit. For instance, since I've gone back to working on my work in progress, my historical fiction, but in addition to that, what has happened is I'm seeing that there are a few websites that I access on a regular basis. One of them is Funds for Writers. There are nonfiction and fictional opportunities in that. And Duotrope is another one. There are a number of universities that are still looking for pieces, both journalistic and fictional, to put in anthologies. But you have to look for these things. You really have to search for these things, because there have been a lot of small presses that just haven't been able to make it. I write creative fiction every now and then. Creative Fiction Journal, which has been around over 20 years, is not publishing now. They're on hiatus. It would be a tragic loss to lose that. So there are a number of opportunities that you no longer have, and you may not have them again, ever, with those particular publications, because they just haven't been able to make it. And they're going on donations, and they've tried it with donations, and donations aren't coming in either. So
well, the business models are changing, certainly, for success in this multifaceted arena.
Correct. And it's been going on for a long time. I mean, look what happened to newspapers. Everything's gone online. So many things have gone online. However, every now and then you can have something, if you're established, you can have something published for their online publication that you may not have been able to have published in the newspaper. It helps to know somebody in order to do that. But and you're more apt to do that, to get those opportunities in smaller newspapers as opposed to larger newspapers, because they are larger newspapers have had to cut staff, and they want to keep the staff working that they have on hand. Smaller newspapers are looking for lighter pieces a lot of times. You may even be able to get a column in a smaller newspaper. Don't expect to make a lot of money. You have to be very diverse in order to make a great deal of money.
Do you
Really.
Do you foresee an abundance of COVID-related material coming down the path?
It's been real interesting. I have a number of writers' blogs that I follow, and the younger people are interested in COVID writing and journaling and looking at things. The older writers have voiced that they don't want to write about it. They just don't even want to think about it. And so they're not writing about it. So I think the up and coming writers, you're going to see a lot of COVID writing. But as far as the older established writing, from what I've seen online, they're not interested. So, it seems to go one way or the other. I don't think there's any middle ground here. So
it's been fascinating. Yeah, I guess it's been about 4 months now where some publishers, which publishers, but they said, no, don't send anything on COVID. No, we don't want to read them. Yeah. Maybe they were the older publishers. I don't know, but it was an interesting, almost amusing.
As you say, it's almost amusing because there is such a hands-off attitude toward the whole thing. I think it's because people are afraid of where it's going to go. They don't want to talk about it. I think it's the fear factor.
Yeah, avoidance. Well, I'm glad. Yes, we're in the thick and thin of it, right? And then we've got an election coming, and so many things on our minds. I am glad you are feeling better.
Me too. Thank you. I wanted to add something when we were talking about opportunities. And what I am doing at the present time is I'm looking for contests. Never hurts to enter contests. It builds your writing, even if you don't win anything. And there are paying contests out there. There are non-paying contests out there. There are contests which will allow you to be published, even if it's online. It's another publishing credit. So I've started some shorter pieces just to kind of step away from my main work. So I've submitted some shorter pieces, and the other thing that I'm doing and getting paid for is to judge a major contest. So, I'm going to have to read a lot of books, but there are opportunities out there. If you are on Facebook, friend a lot of writers. You will find out all kinds of resources that are available because they've generally experienced them. That's how I got the writing judge or the book judging thing. I had a friend who judged before, and she said, "Hey, look, they're looking for judges." I applied because I had previous judging experience when I was president of Missouri Writers Guild. I had to judge the major award, and so I had previous experience, and so they let me in their exclusive judging club.
Lucky to have.
Well, thank you very much.
One more. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Deb? Anything else before we further, certainly, but time's of the essence now. So is there anything else you would like to say?
No, I think I've said plenty. I may have been repetitive at times, but just there are resources out there if you take the time to look for them. As as I said, you may have to step outside your genre, but you just have to be resourceful now. So
yeah, I'm thankful for this interview because I think it's important that we have mentors, that young people have mentors. And I think what you've communicated today will help the younger writers.
I hope so. Because it's very important that we get younger writers going. We need to have younger writers.
Yes.
We need that perspective as much as we need the perspective of people who were generationally ahead of them, like me.
I like the way you put that. And on that note, I wanted to again thank you on behalf of the St. Louis Press Club for participating in this series. It's been helpful, insightful, and there's hope there. So thank you, Deb. Really appreciate your time.
And thank you for asking me. I really appreciate being able to talk about it a little bit. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Have a good day. Have a good day. Thank you.